Hi, I'm Erica Chesla, and this is my policy analysis paper and presentation for my social welfare policy and services class. For my paper, I chose to research modern day slavery or human trafficking in both forms as the sex trade industry and the forced labor industry. In this paper, I will examine the different policies that have been put into place by the United States government in order to help the victims of human trafficking, and then I will evaluate the impact that these policies have had, and I will see if they are helping to decrease this social issue. So, contrary to what most people probably believe, slavery did not end in the 19th century. And unfortunately, slavery is still alive and well today. Today, we face the issue of modern day slavery, or what most people would refer to as human trafficking. So, as I stated earlier, human trafficking can take place in two different forms. The first type being known as the sex trade. In this type of human trafficking, the individuals that are known as sex slaves are pimped out. Men, women, and even children are forced to sell their bodies. And these slaves are beaten, they are not paid for their work, they are not well fed, and they are not cared for by the people who own them. The United States government defines sex trafficking as a commercial sex act that is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such an act has not attained 18 years of age. And the second type of human trafficking is forced labor. And the United States government defines labor trafficking as the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of subjection to involuntary servitude, debt bondage, or slavery. So the people who fall into this category of trafficking are forced to work as much as up to 20 hours a day and with little to no food daily. These individuals are also not provided with the proper medical attention that they need. And if they come to America from another country, then their passports are usually stolen by the person who enticed them to come to America. And in order to prevent these slaves from trying to escape, the people who are holding them threaten them with jail time, or they threaten them by telling them that they will kill them or their entire family. And surprisingly, many of the victims of human trafficking are not hidden. Many of them are just in plain sight. They can be found in labor fields, factories, hotels, motels, restaurants, entertainment, construction, textile weaving, sexual services, and sweatshops. There are over 27 million slaves in the world today, and over 100,000 of those slaves are living here in the United States. So many of these people come from poorer countries, and they were promised a better life if they came to America by the person who is keeping them enslaved. So sometimes children that run away from home end up as victims of human trafficking because they're easier targets. And many of the young people who are just looking for love when they run away or are missing something in their lives, they might go to a trafficker who seems like they can provide for them and care for them in the way they want to be cared for. And then after they get involved with the trafficker, these young people find themselves trapped in human trafficking. And children are also an easier target because children are easier to manipulate and dominate when they are being put to work doing forced labor or when they are made a sex slave. So females do make up the majority of people who are trafficked, and statistics show that approximately 55% of trafficking victims are female, while 45% of them are male. According to the FBI, the age range for slaves is usually between the ages of 9 to 19, but the average age is 11. And between 50 to 80% of minors that are involved in human trafficking were ones involved in the foster care system. So the CIA gives examples of people who were promised a better life if they came to America, but instead were made to be slaves. One example of this is in 1996, Russian women answered advertisements that stated that they were hiring sales clerks, waitresses, but they were forced to provide sexual services and live in a massage parlor in Maryland. Another example is that over 70 Thai laborers were being held against their will, systematically abused, and were made to work 20-hour shifts in a sweatshop. So the Department of Homeland Security has taken the time to establish programs in order for people to learn how to identify a victim of human trafficking. These programs are geared towards different groups of individuals based on their job and involvement with society and the likelihood of them being involved in a human trafficking situation. For civilians, Homeland Security offers an interactive video on what human trafficking is, who it can affect, and how to be able to identify it. Then first responders are offered a video to watch, educating them on the physical and environmental signs to look for in order to identify a victim and or a trafficker. And the law enforcement officers have a course to complete, which consists of 4 videos reenacting human trafficking situations that a police officer may come across while he or she is on duty. And then federal employees have a program specifically designed for them that teaches them the laws and regulations of human trafficking, methods to control this issue, and warning signs indicating victims of this crime. And then lastly, educators have available to them an informational pamphlet that could help those who are working in a school environment be able to identify victims of human trafficking, and also teaches them how to properly respond to a human trafficking situation if they should ever encounter it. And then there have been laws put into place at both the federal and state level in order to protect victims of human trafficking. According to the United States Department of State website, there have been several laws put into place that pertain to human trafficking. The first of these laws to be passed in 2000 is known as the Victims of Trafficking and Violence Protection Act of 2000. This act was passed in order to combat trafficking in person and to reauthorize certain federal programs to prevent violence against women. Then in 2003, the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act of 2003 was put into effect, and this act was to authorize appropriations for fiscal years 2004 and 2005 for the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000. In 2008, the William Wilberforce Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act of 2008 was put into effect to enhance measures to combat trafficking of people. And then in 2013, the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act of 2013 was passed to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act of 1994. There are not enough reliable statistics to tell us exactly how many victims of this crime there are. Lack of data makes it difficult to come up with an adequate anti-trafficking program. But according to the Polaris Project, between the years 2012 and 2014, 39 states had passed new laws to fight human trafficking in America. The workers at the Polaris Project evaluated the laws to see what steps each of the 39 states were taking to do their part in order to end modern-day slavery. And when they evaluated the laws on a tier scale, tier 1 being the best and tier 4 being the worst. So the people from the Polaris Project that were evaluating the laws found that 39 state laws were tier 1, meaning that they were putting in great effort to stop human trafficking, to train the local police in dealing with both sex trafficking and forced labor, to post human trafficking hotlines, and providing safe places for minors who had fallen victim to this crime, and providing victims of human trafficking with other assistance that they will need in order to help them re-enter society and try to live life at a normal level. And then 9 states were given a tier 2 rating, while 2 states were given a tier 3. Unfortunately, no states were given a tier 4 rating, which was the worst rating. So that means that all 50 states at least have some laws pertaining to human trafficking in place. And although no states were given a Tier 4 rating, I would say that there should be additional steps taken to improve the laws that are in existence today. For example, the punishments that are given to traffickers today do not match the severity of the crimes they have committed. So I hope that the states that aren't at a Tier 1 will continue to take additional steps so they can be at a Tier 2 or Tier 1, and that even the Tier 1 level states will continue to improve their laws and make adjustments so that they can best deal with human trafficking. And then I wanted to know if the laws that had been put into place by the government were helping the victims of human trafficking, and what is happening to the traffickers when they are caught trafficking humans. So if we look back at the example I gave earlier of the Russian women who were enticed to come to America and were held as sex slaves in Maryland, their trafficker had the charges that were against him dropped, and it was decided that he would not be able to operate a business in that county again. So he was banned from owning or operating a business in the county that he resided in, Maryland. And then the women that were being kept as his sex slaves were deported or left America voluntarily. And then of the 70 Thai laborers that I discussed, they found 7 people that were responsible for their captivity. And after their capture, 6 of the perpetrators received sentences of 4 to 7 years in prison, while one trafficker only had to do 7 months of prison time. The CIA states that the statutory maximum for sale into involuntary servitude is 10 years per count. The victims of this crime are going to need help if they are ever found and freed, and they will need mental health services, food, clothing, shelter, and medical attention. And a lot of money and manpower is needed to keep programs like this up and running. And according to the Human Rights First, human trafficking earns profits of about $150 billion per year, and that is a number from 2017. So it might have even increased in the last 2 years. And human trafficking was labeled as the fastest growing criminal enterprise by the United States State Department. And even though there are laws in place in America, criminals are not being punished to an extent that would send a message to other traffickers or other people and criminals that would warn them against doing this. And the traffickers that are caught are not given a punishment that matches the severity of their crimes. So I think it is a red flag when someone who gets caught with marijuana illegally gets into more trouble or gets more jail time than someone who is caught trafficking humans. And I think that shows us that there's something messed up with our justice system. And I also think another thing that shows us there's something wrong is that females who are over the age of 18 are arrested for prostitution, while their johns or the people who use their services and buy their time get into much less trouble. And I would propose that the justice system take a good look at the policies that they already have in place and make their adjustments accordingly. And personally, and I think I could speak for a lot of other people when I say that I think that the people who are responsible for keeping slavery alive to today should be stopped, and they should have their evil deeds put to an end. And we can't do that to the extent that we should if the government doesn't have programs that are backing that up and allowing that to happen.